Good evening. We will call this meeting of the Business Services Standing Committee to order. First, we will have the territorial acknowledgement. After that, please stand if you're able for O Canada.
We would like to acknowledge
We would like to acknowledge
We would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather here today
was used by the Haudenosaunee,
Anishinaabe, and Neutral people.
We also acknowledge the enduring presence
and deep traditional knowledge
les lois et les philosophies traditionnelles
of the Indigenous people
with whom we share this land today.
with whom we share this land today.
With whom we share this land today.
Notwithstanding any technical difficulties, that was a lovely rendition. Hopefully we'll resolve technical difficulties moving forward or avoid them. So could I have a motion, please, from a member of the committee to approve the agenda as distributed? Trustee Weston, seconded by Trustee Cody. Any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the agenda as distributed, please indicate. And anyone opposed? That is carried unanimously. I have no announcements tonight. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we shall move on. There are no delegations on our agenda for tonight. There are no items for staff follow-up. So we'll move straight into reports. First two reports are from Senior Manager of Planning, Lauren Agar. So I see her making her way to the podium. First one up is the Development Areas Annual Report for 25-26. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Pardon me. I apologize if I begin coughing. Good evening. The purpose of tonight's report is to provide with, oops, that is the wrong notes. That's what happens when you've got two reports and also an analysis. This report brings forward the annual development areas review as required under Administrative Procedure 4992. Development areas, actually, if we can, thank you. Excuse me. Development areas are planning tools that we use in our growing communities to manage enrollment pressures before permanent schools are built or expanded. Reviewing them annually ensures our decisions continue to reflect the real growth patterns and updated projections. Staff have completed the 25-26 review cycle and identified areas where development areas can be adjusted, absorbed, or dissolved based on current capacity. Importantly, these updates only apply to areas where development has not yet begun generally, and there are no changes for students currently attending WRDSB schools, which helps maintain stability for families. By making timely evidence-based adjustments now, we avoid future disruption, reduce the need for temporary accommodation measures, and use our existing schools more effectively. So in plain terms, the development area is a placeholder. When a new subdivision is planned, but homes aren't built yet, we don't always know exactly how many students will arrive and more specifically when they will arrive. So rather than immediately redrawing boundaries, we assign that neighborhood to a temporary holding school. And this approach gives the board flexibility. It allows staff to respond to growth without overbuilding too early or overcrowding schools later. So development areas are not permanent boundaries. They are reviewed regularly, as in now, and reflect updated information from municipalities and enrollment data. From a community perspective, this system helps set clear expectations. So families purchasing homes in new developments are informed upfront that school assignments may be temporary. This transparency is critical to maintaining trust, and it's why we work closely with developers and realtors and student transportation services to keep information about development areas current. The key takeaway from this year's review is that existing school capacity is stronger than previously anticipated in several development areas. For example, schools like Riverside and Park Manor in Elmira, and Jean Steckley and Janet Metcalf in South Kitchener can accommodate projected enrollment without the need for ongoing temporary arrangements. And at the secondary level, staff found that in many areas, the likelihood of needing to redirect students away from their local secondary school is very low. So as a result, the report recommends dissolving grades 9 to 12 portions of several development areas while keeping the elementary planning tools in place where appropriate. So this is good news. It means that our earlier planning worked and enrollment has tracked as expected. We can now simplify our school assignments for future families. It also reduces the administrative and transportation complexity that can come with holding schools. So Appendix A in the report outlines the specific changes, but at a high level, there are 3 categories that we have placed. So 1 is dissolve, so no longer effective. 2 is reassign, or 3 is no change. So in areas like West Elmira and Rosenberg 3, development areas are recommended to be fully absorbed into the existing school attendance boundaries because nearby schools have sufficient space. In other areas, such as parts of Cambridge and Kitchener, the recommendation is more targeted. The elementary holding arrangements remain in place, but the secondary school level is dissolved. So this means future students would attend their local secondary school as part of the regular attendance boundary. It's worth noting, no currently enrolled students are affected, and these changes apply only to future development. Okay, so staff recommend that the Business Services Standing Committee approve the updated development areas as outlined in Appendix A, with the changes taking effect on April 1st of this year. This recommendation reflects current data, aligns with board priorities, carries no additional costs, and avoids disruption for families and students. Staff will continue, continue to update public-facing tools and work with developers and municipalities to ensure families have accurate information as growth continues in certain areas across the region. That concludes my presentation, and the recommendations are before you on Folio 1.
Thank you. Before I take questions, there is a motion on Folio 1 that the Business Services Standing Committee recommend approval of the updated development areas as shown in Appendix A of the Development Areas Annual Report 2025-2026 presented on March 23rd, 2026, with the changes taking effect on April 1st, 2026. I have a mover and seconder, and then I'll take questions. Trustee Redlin, seconder. Trustee Weston. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the report or the motion? Trustee Redlin?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you for the comprehensive report and some good news. In terms of the Rosenberg development, Rosenberg 3 for Kitchener, I noticed that it says for the dissolve, grades 9 to 12 from Southwood into Huron Heights. I thought Huron Heights was over capacity and students there had to be attending Forest Heights.
Through the chair, yes, both schools are over capacity, both Huron Heights and Forest Heights. This was decided as we dissolved the entire area from JK to grade 12. And typically what we like to have is where you have consistent feed of students. So students aren't split at grade 8 going to different secondary schools. And so the assignment being Jean Seckley for JK to 8, JK to 6, sorry, and then I guess it's Janet Metcalf 7, 8. But that the students within that area would go to Huron Heights. The Jean Seckley area will go to Huron Heights. So it was felt that it made sense for them to go to the same area. It's a pretty small pocket with little actual residential development within it. It's primarily commercial. So the impact would be quite minimal in terms of any kind of growth, especially at the secondary.
Any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote on the recommendation as moved and seconded. All those in favor? And any opposed? That is carried. So we'll move on to the next report, and you don't have to leave the podium. And that report is the education development charges eligibility status. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Or if you want to wait for the slide deck to come up.
I don't slide it.
No?
Yep. Just me. The purpose of tonight's report is to provide you with a clear and transparent update on the WRDSB's eligibility to pass new education development charges or EDC bylaw in 2026. This is an information report and it's intended to explain why the WRDSB does not qualify to pass a new bylaw this year, the steps that staff have taken to assess and pursue eligibility, and what this means for long-term accommodation planning, site acquisition, and future eligibility. So EDCs in general allow school boards to recover the land costs associated with new development, ensuring that growth being any new building permit pays for growth being needing school sites. For the WRDSB, EDCs are not about revenue generation. They're about supporting the long-term accommodation planning, particularly supporting the costs associated with acquiring school sites in high growth areas. Under the Education Act and specifically Ontario Regulation 2098, a board must meet one of two eligibility triggers at the moment that its bylaw expires. So the two triggers are the capacity trigger, where projected enrollment exceeds available pupil places, and the financial obligation trigger, so where growth-related financial commitments exceed the balance of the EDC reserve fund. These are not discretionary tests, they're prescribed in the regulation and must be satisfied at the point of bylaw expiry. So in the fall of 2025, the WRDS began its work on the EDC background study, which involved updating enrollment projections and capacity data and completing a financial analysis. So this review revealed that the projected enrollment, and this is within the next 5 years, so a 5-year mark, does not exceed available capacity under the ministry rate approved assumptions, and that the WRDSB does not have outstanding financial commitments that exceed the EDC reserve fund balance. So we are in a surplus position in the reserve fund balance. As a result, the WRDSB does not qualify to pass a new EDC bylaw in 2026. This conclusion was reached through a detailed internal analysis, the review by our external consultants, advice from our legal team, and consultation with the Ministry of Education. So what now? Once the bylaw expires on May 31st of this year, the WRDSB will not be authorized to collect any money on new developments, and that's residential and non-residential. EDC collection can only resume if and when the WRDSB qualifies under Ontario Regulation 2098 and passes a new bylaw with ministerial approval. Future eligibility can only occur through the capacity trigger. not the financial trigger, if enrollment growth exceeds available pupil places at a future date. Staff will continue to monitor these trends and report back should eligibility change. And it's important to emphasize one point. The need to acquire land for growth areas does not end when the EDC bylaw lapses. Students will continue to arrive in growth areas and accommodation pressures will continue to emerge at the local level. So from a planning perspective, staff will continue to monitor enrollment and development activity, will continue to identify future school sites where they're required, and pursue site acquisitions where appropriate. After May 31st, existing EDC reserves will continue to be used for site acquisitions. And once those reserves are depleted, site acquisition will depend on provincial funding mechanisms, most notably the Ministry's land priorities process, which is subject to Ministry approval and not guaranteed. This shifts more responsibility for growth-related land costs to provincial decision-making once the reserve fund balance is depleted. So in closing, there are three key takeaways for you as a board. One, we're not qualifying for the bylaw to pass in 2026, and the ministry has confirmed that there will be no extension or freeze provided to the WRDSB. Our EDC collection ends, but growth-related planning and site needs continue to be actively managed. And finally, staff will continue to monitor our trends and will bring forward updates as future eligibility may arise. So I'm just noting that this report was for information only and no decisions are required at this time. And I am certainly happy to answer any questions. I'm sure there are some.
I see Trustee Ramsey, Trustee Weston, Trustee Radlin. So go ahead, Trustee Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, to you, to Ms. Hagar, I'm just trying to remember if this has ever happened before in our region where we can collect.
Through the chair, since the inception of EDC, the EDC regime in the province, we have always qualified, both boards have always qualified.
My follow-up, Mr. Chair, it has to do actually with our co-curricular board. So are we in a scenario now where the Catholic board, from some of the public more topical reports, they're in growth. So is it a situation, considering we've always done it in partnership, like passed the bylaws jointly? So what happens with them? Are they getting to collect EDC?
Through the chair, the Waterloo Catholic Board does qualify under the capacity trigger.
Okay, Trustee Weston.
Thank you. I guess I'm just seeking a little clarification on the ministry requirements. So when they say the available pupil places, is that overall for our board? It's not necessarily a neighborhood is over capacity, but there may be room, you know, like somewhere in Elmira may be over capacity, but somewhere in Cambridge would be under capacity. And they look at that overall and say, no, you have pupil places, even if it's at opposite ends of our region. Is that correct?
Yes, through the chair, all the capacity for the entire board is totaled, like the sum of all capacity, both on, well, it's separated by panel. So elementary panel and secondary panel are separated out, but it's not area specific. It is the trigger is on the basis of the entire region's capacity. So you could have additional capacity in certain areas and zero capacity, in fact, needing pupil places in others. But in a net, there is surplus capacity in the system. It's the surplus piece system-wide that is looked at.
Any follow-up? Trustee Radlin?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I guess this is also clarification. So we would need to qualify under the capacity trigger. and depend on provincial funding. And I'm just wondering if we did qualify, are we able to, pass the bylaw, or do we have to go to provincial funding and then wait? So I'm guessing in terms of sequencing, let us say we qualify on the capacity, what then stops us from doing the bylaw thing?
Yeah, through the chair, this is all new to me, so I don't know 100% the process, but my understanding is that as soon as you come to meet that trigger, you can conduct a background study and submit it to the Ministry of Education, which they would then consider to allow you to pass a bylaw. And that goes for any time as well. We have to submit our background study. So even if we did this time around qualify under one of these triggers, we still have to have the background study approved by the Ministry of Education before we can pass a bylaw. So a lot of it is contingent on their approval, and it would be a similar thing. So, if we're seeing that we're approaching the capacity trigger, we would undertake another background study. I should say, if it's within the next year, then we could utilize the background study that we have. It's good for 1 year. But otherwise, if it's beyond that, then we would undertake the same process, analyze the financial needs for the board, and then that would establish what the rate is.
Just a follow-up. So what's the estimated length of time for the background study?
Through the chair, probably about 4 to 6 months for a background study.
Thank you.
Trustee Watson.
Thank you. Through you to staff. So obviously, we are a board that has declining enrollment. So this is just a consequence of that. And I'm wondering, what is the cost value? Like, just a rough estimate, how much would we usually bring in for the EDCs a year?
Through the chair, let me just check my notes. So through the chair, there is a varying range of collections annually. Within this last 5-year bylaw period, it's ranged from about $11.2 million a year to $26.1 million a year. So it's really dependent on the number of building permits that are issued. And how much you can collect per building permit. Sometimes there will be substantial non-residential building permits that add a lot of square footage, which contributes to additional collections throughout the year. So yeah, overall, we had collected, excuse me, up until the point that not until the bylaw period ends, but up until August 31st of the last year, $82.3 million over the 5 years.
Any follow-up, Trustee Watson?
Yes, thank you. So I heard 26 million to 11 million, and for 85 million over the last 5 years.
82.3.
82.3. And so it sounds to me like, again, this is about control. So if we're not charging EDCs, does that mean that anyone who moves to the region, and if they plan on bringing their children to the public system, they don't have to pay EDCs? Is the government actually charging them themselves? Or is it just a, you know, if you move to the region and you're coming to the public system, you don't have to pay EDCs.
Yeah, through the chair, the EDCs, it's very similar to a municipal development charge, and whereby it's not really on the burden of a family moving to our region. It would be primarily to anybody who wants to take out a building permit. So if you want to construct a new home, which tends to be developers, the developers would pay those fees. So they would pay regional development charges, they would pay municipal development charges, and then the education development charges. So 3 separate development charge fees would be tacked onto your building permit before it's issued. So you have to pay those fees to the municipality they collected on behalf of the other parties. And so the education ones are the lowest of all of those. So essentially, that does get passed on to a home buyer of a new home. So not a resale, but just any new building permit home. But they're standard fees, and the idea behind them is that as you grow, as communities grow and there's subdivisions that are built, the people moving into those subdivisions are paying for the services that are required for that subdivision to be there. Wastewater, roads, schools, etc.
So who benefits? The builders benefit?
Trustee Watson, you already have a follow.
It's a really good question. We'd like to know,
It's a really good
like,
question.
yeah, can someone else ask
put
me
you
that?
back on
I'd like
the
to know who
speakers list.
benefits.
I'm gonna put you back on the speakers list. So first I have student trustee Trivedi. I have trustee Revlin for a second time. I have trustee Ramsey for a second time, and then trustee Watson first. Go ahead, student trustee Trivedi.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, first of all. This question is in relation to the Ministry Land Approval Access process. I wanted to ask if you knew how often the ministry offers us land to use or to purchase at a fair rate.
Yeah, through the chair. The process is not that the ministry offers land, but that we would come to the ministry with a need. So we would say there is this land that we want to buy, and we don't have any money in our reserve fund, so we are coming to you, ministry, to ask for the money that it costs to purchase this land. And what that there is a constant intake process for that, so we don't have to wait for a specific time period to say we want to purchase this. So that's nice, because then it's flexible. We can buy land when we need to buy land, assuming they approve us for that expenditure. But typically what ends up happening on boards and there are several boards across this province that are not eligible to collect EDCs. And those boards would go to the province, typically with their capital priorities requests. So if you wanted to build a new school, you would come with the land purchase as a component of your capital build, and they may approve that all at one go.
Follow.
Go ahead.
Very much. I wanted to ask if you knew when was the last time you used this process? If it wasn't, if not EDC, we didn't use the EDC process.
Through the chair, the EDC regime has been around, to my knowledge, since at least the early 2000s. And prior to that, it was a very different system. I think in the 98 is when local taxation changed. So it's really hard to comment because things have changed so dramatically in terms of how land's purchased across the province since then. So we as a board have never experienced not having EDCs since they've been around, but there are several boards, many of our surrounding boards do not collect EDCs, and so there's certainly experience out there that we can draw on.
Thank you.
Okay, so student trustee Kaur has not spoken, so I'm recognizing her before people who've already spoken once. Go ahead.
Through the chair, thank you for your report. So I know it says that there are no immediate financial implications associated with this development, but how would you say that this lack of funding that's coming in is gonna impact future like developments in schools and new things that we wanna build online?
Yeah, through the chair, so there will be obviously an impact just from the standpoint of how we access funds. But it doesn't mean the funds are not available, it's just the source of which those funds come from will be changed.
So does that mean that we're gonna have like less school developments and less land growth? And what? No. Sorry.
It was implied. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so does that mean that there's gonna be less school developments, and will that mean, was it like taken into account or was it forecasted when planning was taking place for next year, if it has taken place? For possible projects you wanted to start, is that gonna change any of those?
Yeah, through the chair, there should be no changes, we will continue to plan as we have. And where there is need, we will be seeking school sites and thereby, you know, on those sites that we're acquiring, applying for capital funding. Realistically, we're talking about a few years away before we would see a depletion based on what our current known needs are. We have acquired a number of sites that kind of set us up for the next few years, from where we have capital needs. So it's kind of looking beyond that, at which point, you know, enrollment could change. Lots of things could change over the next couple of years. So there is no impact, I would say, for next year, for sure.
Okay, moving on, trustee Radlin for a second.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just Senior Manager Agar just referred to the fact that this is not just the issue for the Waterloo Region District School Board. We have had several presentations on the fact, you know, that have addressed decline in enrollment. We know it's a trend across Ontario. It is not a Waterloo Region District School Board issue. And in fact, you know, if one researches it, it's actually an international issue. And I'm not going to go into that now, but I think as I'm hearing questions in terms of implications, that it is important that we do not suggest that this is a situation that we have created.
Okay. So I don't think that was a question.
No, it was a thought.
Okay, trustee Randy for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You too, Ms. Agar. So my colleague had a very good question there about who benefits, and it is a very good question in the sense that I think it sounds like we're in a scenario where the Coterminous board could collect charges for growth areas, and then we end up with a substantial number of those students coming to our school, but we have to accommodate them. So I fully understand that this is a provincial trend. The trend doesn't seem to fit with regard to what's happening at the Catholic board, because they're in growth. So so there are a lot of implications. So I'm just wondering who benefits, as Trustee Watson asked.
Through the chair, it's maybe a tricky question. The benefit of collecting EDCs is to fund purchases for your board as it has its own growth needs. So the funds cannot be used for other purposes. They're very specific to site acquisition, for net growth within the region, for your specific board. So if we are collecting money but not needing the sites, because the enrollment isn't there, then you just continue to grow your fund, not being able to utilize it. And because it's very enveloped, you cannot use it for other purposes. So really there's no net benefit of continuing to collect if there's nothing, no needs for buying. So that's why when our enrollment increases, beyond what our capacity is, then we could be eligible to collect again, and it would start the cycle again.
Any follow-up?
Yes, please, thank you. So is it a scenario then, put another way, that our inability, or because we're not allowed to collect, does that mean, again, to the question around who benefits, does that mean then purchases of homes through a developer, sorry, not the purchases of home, but the developers then will be getting a discount in terms of the fees that they pay to the municipality? Is that the scenario? I mean, whatever our cut was, it's no longer there. So does that a discount to them? Does the builder then benefit?
Through the chair, there would be fewer dollars that anybody would have to pay, and not just specific to a developer. It would also equally apply to an independent homeowner, for example. One of the charges that we do have is additional dwelling units, for example, these kind of backyard houses that people are building to gain a bit more income because they're detached from the existing dwelling. There has been a charge on those. So there are, there's a benefit certainly to people who want to have more affordable projects. Saving a couple $1,000s might mean a lot to some of the smaller folks as they're applying for building permits. But ultimately, yeah, there may be a cost savings for a developer who then hopefully passes that on to a home buyer.
All right, thank you.
All right, back to Trustee Watson.
Thank you. So I was reading an article where it said the Catholic boards are growing at a faster rate than their public counterparts in Waterloo area, in Windsor and Essex County. And so there is some growth, but it's just not happening here. And so when you had mentioned that we're fine for the next year or two, what are some impacts going past that couple of years? What can we look at going forward, which would negatively impact our board if we continue to not have growth and we're not able to have these these EDC charges?
If I'm understanding correctly, through the chair, if we don't have growth, then likely we don't have needs for additional school space.
Right. And that's really clear and that's obvious, but you said we're fine for the next couple of years. So what will the impacts be after the couple of years and we're status quo and nothing is happening? Because right now we're fine. You said for the next year or two we're fine, but what can we expect after that?
Okay, so through the chair, my comment there was related to the fact that we have recently acquired a few sites that are what I would consider our top priorities from a capital funding and accommodation need perspective. So beyond that, it will really depend on where the growth occurs within the region. And as I mentioned, we do have a reserve fund balance that could fund additional site acquisitions. And beyond that, we can look to the ministry for land priorities funds. So I guess there are options for land acquisition should we come to need it.
Trustee Weston for a second time.
Thank you. Through you to staff. So I guess my question is a little similar. So we can access land priorities funds if we've depleted our EDC reserve. So, and you had said that there's boards near us that do not collect EDCs because they're in a similar situation. So based on your work with or your talking with other boards, what's their experience in dealing with the ministry and getting approvals for this extra funding if they have a growth area within the region and yet they're still under capacity according to the ministry rules.
Yeah, through the chair, my colleagues have expressed that the process is actually not too dissimilar from the process that we currently have to go through to get approval to spend the EDC money on site acquisitions. There is a lengthy form that you have to fill out and explain where all the money is going and why. There's additional information you have to supply related to, you know, why the site's needed. There may be some extra work there that will be required just from a projection standpoint, because right now what we would utilize is the EDC background study to support the need and the projections that are associated with that the ministry has already approved. So there may be some additional work just to update enrollment forecast and explain why the need is there. But yeah, it's fairly case specific. A lot of the boards that don't have EDCs tend to not be growth boards. So when there does become a need, they've applied, and I've yet to hear of anybody that's been turned down, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't happened, because I don't care about everything.
Any follow-up?
Yeah, so I was going to ask like the experience of whether they've been granted these funds when they've applied and how successful they've been. So thank you for that. So it sounds like this is, as my colleague mentioned earlier, a shift in potentially control, but it's the same process. Like we're not collecting the funds and holding them here. Instead, we're looking to the ministry to apply for funds when needed. Okay, thank you.
Okay, no other hands, but I have a question. I'll leave myself to the end. How much is in our reserve right now?
To the chair. My understanding from Superintendent Landry is we're sitting neighborhood of $32.6 million.
Oh, thank you. All right, this was an item for information, so there's no motion, no need to vote. Thank you, Senior Manager Egger. And we shall move on to the next agenda item, which is, I just need to scroll back up. That is the interim financial report and forecast, and Superintendent Landry, are you speaking to that?
Just project. Okay. All right. Controller Emily is going to deliver the report tonight.
Okay. Hopefully the microphone caught that. Whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Okay, Q1 report starts on folio 13. In June 2025, the board approved a balanced operating budget, and on November 18th, the board supported a one-time strategic spend, bringing our deficit to $6.2 million. As of February 28th, we are now projecting an in-year deficit of $6.4 million, but we're still compliant as we are still under the 1% of the board's operating revenue. Our enrollment figures as of October 31st remained unchanged from Q1, with ONSIS figures differing by only 3.0 FT. I want to just take a moment to thank our school office staff and administrators for this. Achieving this level of accuracy across the board of our size shows the hard work and attention to detail that all our schools are doing. In Q3, we will have the updated March 31st enrollment numbers. We are forecasting an increase of $800,000 for supply staff costs due to increased short-term sick leave utilization. We do have savings of $900,000 in the DEC vacancies. The savings were realized because our JK SK enrollment resulted in fewer required classes and positions. We have a significant one-time favorable variance under transportation. These funds are being reallocated to offset some pressures in special education and supply staff overages. We also have identified an increase of $1.3 million in our non-operating expenditure forecast. This variance is primarily due to an increase in legal expenditures and recoverable billings related to staff's comments. Both of these items are classified as one-time non-recurring expenses. We will continue to monitor all areas closely and provide the next update in June 2026. And I just do want to make that the transportation savings are non-recurring and will not be built into the permanent base budget for next year. And staff will maintain to have a conservative approach to enrollment forecasting for the 26-27 fiscal year. Are there any questions?
Trustees, any questions? Trustee West?
Thank you, through you to staff. So my question is around enrollment. Based on past reports, my understanding was that the number of children coming into the system is lower across the province. So that's not that's a trend that we're seeing provincially. But my question is around the grades 1 to 8 numbers and why they were lower than budgeted. So now our forecast is lowered. So I'm just wondering why that variance is happening there.
Through the chair, I actually can't speak to myself. Yeah.
Through the chair. So when we prepared the budget forecast, obviously we're looking at the kids that we have in our classes right now and projecting that they're going to be here in September. And to a large extent, it's a 1-to-1, right? And some years we might see less. As you know, we're seeing net migration out of the region. Immigration policies change, so we're seeing fewer and fewer people coming into the region. We're actually seeing people leave the region. So I know it seems like a large number. Really, it's two kids per school, perhaps. And so the accuracy is pretty good. We're off by a couple of kids per school, but it does look pretty clear. So we don't have any specific reason, but a general trend, I think, is just we're not seeing the growth and migration down the 401. We're actually seeing it leaving our region.
Any follow-up, Trustee Winston?
No.
Okay. So now I have Trustee Cody, Trustee Radlin, Student Trustee Core. Go ahead, Trustee Cody.
Through your chair, Chief Staff. Can you give us a figure on how much we spent on grievances and arbitrations for the past year?
Through the chair, I will have to take that away and get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll receive those numbers at a later date. Any follow-up? No? Trustee Radlin.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm just wondering what has caused us to have a significant one-time favorable variance of 3.5 million in transportation.
Through the chair, for the transportation funding this year, we did receive an extra funding from the ministry for the magnet program, and that is the reason we did receive an increase in that funding.
Yes, thank you. So is it money that's going to be spent throughout the course of the year? Or is it money because I think I heard that it could be used to offset other expenses. So we were given more than we need?
Through the chair, correct. For the transportation, we were this year given more than we need, but we are able to, so the transportation funding is not enveloped and we are able to spend it in other areas if we do not need it in transportation. Now, this is a one-time savings going forward next year when they are looking at the collective agreements and the cost of fuel increases. We might not have that savings next year.
Thank you.
Student Trustee Core.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So I understand there's a trend of decreasing enrollment throughout the province. Do you happen to know if this is just a public school board trend or is it also like a Catholic school board trend you're seeing?
Through the chair. So my understanding, it is a province-wide, and when it is province-wide, that is public and Catholic boards. All through the ministry has told us that we should be budgeting for a decrease in enrollment.
All right, thank you.
Any follow-up? Any other questions? Trustee Watson?
Thank you. Through you to staff. So, it says here on folio 13, the strategy that our board, the next enrollment update will be March 31st count date. I'm just wondering, how many students are we down exactly from what we expected?
Through the chair, we are down 513 from budget. But just to, just in the report, it does say that our October 31st number, we were down only 3 FTE when like the actual FTE on October 31st. So, but overall, as right now when we're budgeting, so our budget forecast is our October 31st number and our March 31st, and it's an average daily enrollment. So if I'm looking at, how our October 31st number was, I'm hoping that our number is not going to be more, like it would be around 513.
So just to follow up, so it says here that we'll continue to monitor regional and provincial trends. So there is a trend that some of our Catholic boards or counter boards, they've grown. Do we have any conversations with our counterpart, the Catholic board, about their trends? Are we not measuring, or are we not keeping track of the boards that are actually growing? It's in the papers, it's in the articles, like, so it is happening. So are we looking into that, why they're growing and we aren't?
Through the chair, I would defer that to Superintendent Landry.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, so provincially overall, there's a decline. You will be able to identify pockets of growth throughout the entire province. And it's not consistent public, Catholic, English, French. There are pockets of growth, we recognize that. But in total, the province is experiencing declining enrollment. So we are not out of line with the provincial trend. In terms of our engagement with the Waterloo Catholic District School Board, I've been actually going to defer to Senior Manager Planning. Lauren Agard, to speak to just some of the conversations that they have, because I know they're constantly in contact with Catholic Board about enrollment forecast.
Thank you. I'll try to be well. We do constantly keep in touch with our Catholic counterparts, and their enrollment to start with is much smaller than ours. So proportionately, any small increase seems like a larger percentage of increase in growth. So we just need to keep that in mind. As Superintendent Landry mentioned, some of the decline has been, only a handful of students per school. They have many fewer schools than we do. So you just have to look at it more proportionately. And they had also been seeing a significant decline over a number of years. And so some of it is making that back up to get back at a point where they had been as well.
Thank you. I see no other questions. Oh, Trustee Radlin had another question.
Just about the
Just waiting.
To you, Chair. About the attendance support program counselors. When will that be launched? Because I see again that absenteeism is of concern. So have these people been hired?
Through the chair, they have been hired. 2 FTEs had two staff members have been hired. But I could defer to Associate Director Levin for more information.
Thank you. Just to extend on that, Controller Armini is correct. We have hired 2 FTE and they have started their work in earnest. We are prepared to launch May 1st in terms of both with the application and then also with all the staff in place. Currently, the staff are working on the application that we're going to be using to support the program. And we are looking forward to the program beginning May 1st.
Thank you.
Any follow-up? Okay, I think I can safely say that there are no other hands. Somebody's holding back. Okay, that concludes this report, which again was for information. We will move on to the next report. And Superintendent Sagar, with the major capital projects quarterly update. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening. Through the chair and trustees, I will be presenting the major capital projects quarterly update report found on folio 23. This report is being presented for information only. I'll begin with an update on Willow River Public School. As a reminder, the school is located at 670 Thomas Lee Drive. This project created 591 student spaces and 49 licensed childcare spaces. Since our last update, the second floor has now opened. And with this well opened, all classroom spaces are available. Remaining work includes landscaping, which will commence as the weather conditions improve, as well as the elevator, as well as the completion of the front spiral staircase and elevator. We anticipate to have a grand opening later this school year, and we're very excited to have that. Moving on to our next project, the newly named Ginawin Public School, our Southeast Cambridge joint use campus with the Waterloo Catholic District School Board. Located at 655 Wesley Boulevard, this project will create 519 student spaces and 88 licensed childcare spaces for our board, along with 354 student spaces for our co-terminus board. Work on this project continues to progress well. Interior walls, as well as mechanical and electrical rough-ins are ongoing. Exterior veneer masonry work is also progressing. We remain well positioned to have the school open in September for the 2026-2027 school year. Turning now to the Bresla Hopewell Crossing New School. Again, will be located at 95 Locksley Lane. This project will create 611 student spaces and 72 licensed childcare spaces. The construction tender has now closed successfully, and the contractor is expected to mobilize on site next month. Finally, I'll provide an update on Elizabeth Ziegler Public School. Some great news, the construction tender has closed successfully. As well, we are currently in the process of awarding the contract to the successful GC. Once finalized, the construction is expected to begin shortly thereafter. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to commend our staff for their diligent work over the past year. It's been, this time last year, it was a very difficult situation that we're in. So kudos to the staff for all their great work on this. In closing, for reference, Appendix A provides a summary of all major capital projects, along with additional project details, and can be found on folio 25. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Trustees, are there any questions? Trustee Rutland and Trustee Weston. Go ahead, Trustee Rutland.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you for this good news report, Superintendent Sagar. So my question is that I read here that they all have received ministry funding approval. Does that mean Elizabeth Ziegler has received some ministry funding?
Through the chair to respond to the trustee's question. So Elizabeth Ziegler is not being funded through capital priorities. We're using our school condition improvement SCI funding to cover the costs. So it's only the 3 other projects that are receiving capital priority funding from the ministry.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So did we need ministry approval? I guess it's just the wording that's given me question. So really that was something that we kind of had to figure out.
Yeah. So through the chair, so we did speak with the ministry to ask if they would partially fund it with capital priority funding, but it doesn't qualify under their model. So basically we had no choice but to use our school condition improvement money to cover the cost.
Thank you.
And I think if you look at the appendix, you'll see NA under approval. That so it's not ministry funded. Or not through capital priorities. Go ahead, Trustee Weston.
Thank you through you, Chair. I'm just looking at that appendix, and I noticed Breslaw Hopewell. If I look across to site plan approval, it's tender closed, so it's at the same stage as Elizabeth Ziegler. But one requires site plan approval and a building permit, and the other one does not, because I'm just wondering about that. The building permit, is it just not been obtained yet, or we don't need a building permit? And then the site plan approval, because it's just a building and we're not doing things around it, and I'm just trying to understand that, the difference there.
So through the chair, so for Elizabeth Ziegler, we don't need site plan approval because we're gonna be restoring the building. We do need a building permit, so that, we're still waiting to obtain that from the municipalities. We should be getting that very shortly, as staff did a good job of working closely with our municipal partners, the inspectors, to make sure that that is being reviewed and issued in a timely manner. So it will be available once the construction is to begin soon after we officially award the project.
Go ahead.
And so the building permit, you said you're expecting it to receive it shortly. Is there any concerns, considerations around heritage committee, heritage designation, anything like that that may help hold this up, or you worked through all of that?
So through the chair, I can happily say that we've already worked through with the committee, so we've received their approval. We had to actually go in front, the architect and some of our staff had to go in front of the committee and present to them what we intend to do with the building, and they unanimously approved the renovation and restoration that we were planning for the building. So we already have that in hand and ready to go with the committee's approval.
Congratulations. Yeah, thank you.
Trustee Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know quite some time ago when the board was discussing approving the restoration and the renovation, you'd given some assurances that you felt that it was going to be on budget in terms of the costs, consequences. I'm just wondering if, I hope not, but if once the work starts and walls start to get opened up and other discoveries are made that will impact the cost of the project, where does that money come from if we start to go over budget?
Yeah, through the chair to respond to the trustee's question, that's a great question that we all had throughout the design process. So the architect worked very closely with the sub-consultants to conduct destructive investigation to see what's behind those walls, so that we anticipated what could be found once they start removing walls, blocks, to see what's behind those layers. So we're very confident in their ability to do a very thorough investigation. If it does go over what we had anticipate, those funds will be drawn from the school condition improvement to cover those costs. But we're very pleased with how this tender closed so far. So we'll wait and see how it plays out. But we're confident in the ability of the general contractor and the mason that was pre-qualified. They all have experience with this type of restoration work, working on a heritage site. So we believe that a lot of the site conditions, unexpected or unforeseen issues, have been captured and were built into our budget.
Any follow-up? Okay, student trustee Cord and then trustee Watson.
Through the chair, I'm so happy to hear that all these projects are actually on track and they're all within budget so far. I am curious though, is this one of the first restoration projects that the board is doing at such a large scale?
Through the chair, I believe there was a previous project prior to me being here. I can't really speak to it. I don't know if anyone else here would know, but there was a project in the past that that we had to restore. I don't know if Director Miller remembers that project and all. It's you.
Through the chair to the trustees, not so much even restoration projects, and there have been some like All Collegiate and some others that have been quite large projects in the past that we've taken on. In addition, we've also created some really large additions. The most recent would probably be at Laurelwood Public School in Waterloo, where we added 10 classrooms and just opened this year, so which would be similar to the cost that we see for the Elizabeth Siegler restoration.
Any follow-up?
And a follow-up. So are there future projects you have, I guess, planned out or on a list, and how do you determine priority for what needs restoration and what doesn't?
Through the chair, just point of clarification, are you referring to a similar scope where?
Yeah, similar situation or similar circumstance where you would need to restore a school.
Well, through the chair, hopefully that doesn't happen again. We don't want to go through that process, but I don't know if you were aware, but last year there was an issue with the school that prompted us to close the building, and then we brought in our building inspectors to review the condition of the building, and we had to make the hard decision to close the building. We do a good job of assessing our buildings and making sure that they're structurally safe, and we have a lot of preventive maintenance programs in place to address a lot of these issues. So hopefully this doesn't happen again.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Watson.
Thank you. As I'm looking at this report, and maybe I know the answer, I don't know, but I'm hoping someone can answer. So for the joint Cambridge campus, where there will be a Catholic and a public school. Obviously the Catholic board is growing because they were able to collect EDC charges. We weren't able to. How does that impact our relationship at that particular school for new development?
Director Miller, want to take that?
Can I ask you to repeat the question?
So I know, and because I'm thinking about this, so when we had the EDC charge, we have this joint campus with the Catholic. And because of their growth, they're able to charge for EDCs. We don't. But how does that impact our relationship and the developers in that area? Like, is it just strictly enrollment or land, or is it just?
Sorry, I don't understand the question. I apologize.
Okay.
But I'm just I'm happy to answer. I'm just trying to understand our relationship with the developers, or.
No, just the fact that they are able to charge for EDCs, but we don't. And is it just the enrollment? So if half the school that enrolled, yeah.
Okay, through the chair. So the joint campus school would have been paid for through EDCs, and it would have been captured in a previous background study when we had growth, right? So we would have been able to collect EDCs to buy that land, et cetera, et cetera. Moving forward, we're still going to have growth in pockets. Just overall, we don't have enough growth to trigger out a new EDC bylaw, so we're not going to collect for a period of time. It's not infinite. Right, at some point, we do expect that we'll qualify for an EDC bylaw charge again. In terms of how that impacts our ability to work with the Catholic board and consider joint opportunities moving forward, I don't see it as being an impediment to us having those discussions. If we identify an opportunity for another joint school, for instance, and we didn't have EDC reserves, we still have about $33 million right now that we can access. But if we didn't have that, we would just apply through the land priorities process. The Ministry of Education really likes joint projects. They like when boards work together. So I would see that particular project some point in the future, rising to the top of the list.
We have a different process, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Any follow-up?
No, that's good.
I see no other hands. Thank you very much for this report. Thank you to all staff who have reported. There's no reports on the agenda. We'll move to question period for 5 minutes. If there's anybody have a question. Nobody has a question. Okay. Last call. The gallery does not come. I'm sorry. Seeing no questions, there's no other business. Could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting since there's no in-camera meeting to rise and reconvene into? Moved by trustee Radlin, seconded by trustee Weston. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting? Meeting is adjourned.